The federal court this week ruled against the government and their invocation of the Emergencies Act to clear out the 2022 convoy in Ottawa. The judge handing the decision down concluded the invocation, quote, does not bear the hallmarks of reasonableness and was not justified in relation to the relevant factual and legal constraints that were required to be taken into consideration. The feds say they'll appeal.
I was certain, after a lot of deliberation with colleagues and many others, that we took the right decision. I was certain at the time. I was certain when I testified before Rouleau, and I remain certain today.
Their inaction resulted in a serious crisis where we reluctantly supported the invocation of the emergencies measures. We said that that was something that we reluctantly supported.
That's Jagmeet Singh from the NDP reacting. Tory leader Pierre Poilievre also reacted, posting on social media. Judge rules Trudeau broke the highest law in the land with the Emergencies Act. He caused the crisis, Poilievre wrote, by dividing people. Then he violated charter rights to illegally suppress citizens. As Prime Minister, I will unite our country for freedom. Let's bring back the front bench to talk about whether there are political consequences to the court's decision or whether political parties will want to avoid relitigating the convoy if there isn't any payoff. David Heurtel, Gary Mar, Gurratan Singh, and Laura Stone are here. Laura, I'll start with you. In the short term, it knocked them way off message yesterday. I think it's fair to say they were not anticipating it. They had a Trump Day focused, and it went sideways very quickly. But in the long run, do you think this is a political liability for the federal government, or is sentiment around this issue baked in?
Well, we know the Liberal government loves to talk about Trump, so I'm sure they were upset about that. Look, I think this one is baked in. I think that most Canadians find themselves in the mushy middle here. Most Canadians did get vaccinated. They followed, broadly speaking, the public health restrictions. I think you don't have to be a convoy supporter to think the federal government went too far. So I'm not sure that this is, I'm not sure the ruling is symbolic of Canadians all of a sudden supporting the Freedom Convoy. I think maybe they look back on the last couple of years of what happened during COVID and think, yeah, you know what, I think we did probably go too far in some of those circumstances. But I'm not sure that this is going to really significantly change minds on either side of the equation. I do think it was a victory somewhat for Pierre Poilievre, who can talk about his position as more of a mainstream one and can court certainly the voters who are supporting Maxime Bernier's party and others. But I do think that most people's opinions about this incident are baked in now.
Although even in the case, Gurratan, of Pierre Poilievre, he posted that tweet. It has a lot of impressions, I think 1.5 million. Maybe there are fundraising opportunities, but he has largely not talked a lot about the stuff in this vein that he did during the leadership. You can see in most instances, he tries to throw it back to affordability and focus his message on affordability. So I'm wondering from your perspective if you think this isn't even politically advantageous for him in the long run.
I think when I look at the political moves that Pierre Poilievre is doing, a lot of it is to take that PPC vote. I think we often see the way he has opened up the doors to this anti-science rhetoric, the way he has beholden to this extreme, right wing of his party, the opening of door of conspiracy theories around the United Nations. I think a lot of it is he sees that extra, potentially 5 to 9% as something that helps secure his win. So I do think that this is something that for those audiences that are really passionate about this point, this is something that they're going to probably lean into. And you'll probably see Pierre and the PPC make more noise about this and use it to galvanize their base than probably other mainstream parties.
Yeah, I think I take the point, Gary, than other mainstream parties, certainly because they're of a different view than a lot of those parties on the issue. But do you anticipate them using this a lot going forward? Because from where I sit, they do talk about it and they do use it to galvanize their base at times, but it's not the focus of most of their communications anymore.
I think what is gaining Mr. Poilievre and the Conservative Party traction is his relentless focus on affordability. And I think that's where he's experiencing the most success in what we've seen in recent polls. But I want to take this point on this decision by Justice Mosley. If I were Buck Martinez and I was calling a Blue Jays game, I might say the call is 3-0. 3 strikes, no balls. The first strike was the federal government's failure to win the reference case at the Supreme Court of Canada on the Impact Assessment Act. The second one is the loss they had at the Federal Court of Canada on the plastics regulation. And the third one is this Emergencies Act piece, again at the Federal Court of Canada. All three of them are based in either the Charter or the Constitution, all three saying there was an overreach by the federal government in their efforts to move forward on their agenda. The fourth one that might come up, almost certainly will come up, is the clean electricity regulations that are being proposed by the federal government. And I think Pierre Poilievre doesn't have to focus just on the Emergencies Act. He could be looking at all four such cases and saying the federal government really doesn't understand constitutional responsibilities and as a consequence isn't getting things done here in Canada.
Do you think that argument is one that they would make, David, and will it resonate?
Well, I actually think that this is an unintended opening for the Liberals. And again, looking at it through the Quebec lens, first of all, the whatever you call it, the Freedom Convoy and all the F. Trudeau people from those 3 horrible weeks, they tried to replicate this in Quebec and it fell completely flat. And what I found interesting over the holidays, there was a Léger poll in Quebec asking Quebecers what were the issues that worried them the most. 1, obviously, cost of living. 2, impending recession. 3, crime. 4, Trump victory. Now, this dovetails, of course, with what the Liberals are trying to do, trying to scare Canadians with the association between Poilievre and Trump. But I think for the Liberals, this decision, in Quebec, it harkens back to the War Measures Act and in 1970, then the October crisis. And while we've debated since, was it right, was it wrong, ultimately people remember his father, Pierre Trudeau, saying, just watch me. And I think here there's an opening here of using this and equating this occupation into Ottawa with January 6th in the US and Trump. And there's something to do there. So if the Federal Court of Appeals comes to a decision before the next federal election, actually this could play into the hands of the Liberal strategy. And this could be used against Poilievre to, again, reinforce this association between Poilievre, the Conservatives, and Trump.
It's interesting that I just have time for one last comment, Laura, but your thoughts on actually how both parties could use it to their advantage.
I think that's brilliant. I mean, I think it's a brilliant point because we had sort of dueling outcomes. We had the Rouleau decision, which sort of, while it found problems with how the government used this, it did back the federal government's position. Now it's sort of a split decision. It clearly wasn't an easy one to make. So they can both sort of say we're right, and let's see it through the courts, which can take months or even years to happen. And so I think we have both sides kind of sticking their feet in and saying let's see what happens. But clearly the federal government sees enough support, certainly among their own voters, for their decision to invoke the Emergencies Act.
Lots more to talk about for sure. I have to leave the discussion there. Thank you so much, everyone. Appreciate it. Our front bench, Gurratan Singh, Gary Marr, David Heurtel, and Laura Stone.